New York City Mayor Zohran Mamdani is implementing democratic socialist policies at a rapid pace tonight. Mamdani is signing several executive orders as he takes control of the nation's most populous city. Correspondent CB Cotton has more this evening from New York.
Our agenda is not one that is going to be fought for simply behind the closed doors of city and state government.
Less than 48 hours out from being sworn in, and Mayor Zohran Mamdani wasting no time trying to carry out his democratic socialist agenda that more than 1 million New Yorkers voted for. The 34-year-old signing an executive order today to create an office of mass engagement and selecting a fellow democratic socialist and former campaign volunteer to lead up the new effort. But it's an executive order announced by Mamdani on Thursday that's raised eyebrows from Jewish New Yorkers, including one that revokes all orders issued by former Mayor Eric Adams after Adams was indicted on federal corruption and bribery charges in September 2024. Some of those orders Adams touted as direct support for Israel and Jewish New Yorkers. Adams' charges were later dropped by the Justice Department, and Mamdani doubled down today, framing his decision as a fresh start and suggesting Adams' decisions post-indictment created a skeptical city.
A moment when many New Yorkers lost even more faith in New York City politics and the ability of city government to actually prioritize the needs of the public, as opposed to the needs of the person.
Meanwhile, the National Jewish Advocacy Center is demanding answers after it says 2 posts on the official New York City mayoral X account appear to have been deleted after the new mayor took over the account. The group says the post discussed the previous administration's efforts to combat anti-Semitism. A Mamdani spokesperson told the New York Post that the deleted social media posts are being archived. Mayor Mamdani's team has not responded to our request for comment, but Mamdani said today that his administration will continue to root out Jewish hate.
My administration will also be marked by a city government that will be relentless in its efforts to combat hate and division.
Today, Israel's Ministry of Foreign Affairs accused Mayor Mamdani of anti-Semitism over Mamdani's decision to revoke some of these Adams-era orders, specifically the ones pertaining to Israel and the definition of anti-Semitism. A coalition of Jewish advocacy groups also released a joint statement saying they, too, disagreed with Mamdani's decision. Mamdani, for his part, again appeared to address the criticism, saying today that his administration will protect Jewish New Yorkers. Rich.
CB Cotton live for us in New York tonight. CB, thank you.
Welcome back. New York City Mayor Zohran Mamdani making clear his plan to govern the Big Apple as a democratic socialist, including this line raising eyebrows. Listen here.
We will draw this city closer together. We will replace the frigidity of rugged individualism with the warmth of collectivism. If our campaign demonstrated that the people of New York yearn for solidarity, then let this government foster it.
New York City Councilwoman Vicky Palladino joins us right now. So you just heard Mayor Mamdani say that rugged individualism is out. What one person calls rugged individualism, another person would call just personal responsibility. Your thoughts on what you heard there?
What I heard yesterday was a young man, an experienced young man, being taken over. The DSA has raised this kid. And rugged individualism, give me a break. That's what built this country, okay? He's wet behind the ears. He's got a lot to learn. But he declared war on anybody who thinks differently than he does yesterday. It was a very well-defined, articulated message to anybody who gets in his way. He is going to do anything and everything within his power to keep us quiet. Well, you're not keeping me quiet. And we're going to have a little problem with that going forward. Because I am who I am, and I will continue to speak out on behalf of the other citizens of New York City who have been existing here for decades and decades in all of our lives, against somebody like him who wants to change this city into the United Soviet city of New York. Not going to happen. Sorry, Zohran.
So he hit the ground running yesterday by signing 5 executive orders many of them to improve housing conditions in New York City. But to implement his ambitious agenda, he's going to need to make some political alliances. He can't do it all through executive authority. As a Republican on City Council, what's your assessment of how strong his relationships are and his political power to be able to build those alliances and execute his agenda?
Anything that has to do with, that's a great question. Anything that has to do with the city of New York has got to go through us, the city council. And here's where the problem lies. The problem lies in the power of our new speaker that's going to hopefully be elected in first stated meeting in January. And should we get Julie Menon, which I pray we do. She will moderate, I believe, from the center as opposed to Adrienne Adams, who was far left. When we deal with the 51 council members, out of 51 council members, 18 of them are self-proclaimed DSA candidates and elected officials. That's 1/3 of the 51. We've got 4 new people coming in. I know 3 have already said that they want to join the Progressive Caucus. The Progressive Caucus will then grow to 21, which means this man will really have carte blanche as to what he wants to do. 5 members of the city council. Look, I got to meet this man, a young guy. I got to meet him. We need to sit down. We need to talk about reality. We need to talk about getting along well with others. We're not going to cave to everything that he wants, but we also were outnumbered quite a bit. When it comes to New York State, and anything that they have to do with what goes on in the city of New York. Well, you saw Hochul sitting up there, beaming like, you know, the Cheshire Cat. You have the Democratic Party caved to all of this. Instead of the Democratic Party saying, hey, you're not one of us. You're DSA. You have your own line. Run on that. We want a Democrat to run. No, they didn't do that. They're scared stiff. This has been an ideology that's been going on now for decades inside of our universities. Yep. His father teaches at Columbia, tenured professor. He teaches Marxism. You know, he talked about millionaires and billionaires. They were sitting up on the steps of City Hall with him yesterday. Who's he trying to kid here?
Yeah, chance of tax the rich broke out as Senator Bernie Sanders spoke, which, you know, a lot of people wonder, is this movement founded in a love of the working class or a hatred of the rich? Vicky Palladino, thank you very much for your insight. We appreciate it.
Well, New York City's new mayor, Democratic socialist Zohran Mamdani, leaning into his far-left policies on day one.
Cost of childcare will no longer discourage young adults from starting a family, because we will deliver universal child care. Those in rent-stabilized homes will no longer dread the latest rent hike, because we will freeze the rent. We will make those buses fast and free. These policies are not simply about the costs we make free, but the lives we fill with freedom.
Republican New York Congresswoman Nicole Maliotakis joins us now. And Congresswoman, thank you so much for coming on set today. I would say Happy New Year, but after the inauguration, I'm not sure if you're feeling the same way.
Look, we're going to make the best of it. We're going to push back to stop a radical, reckless agenda. His policies, and he mentioned some things that are probably pretty popular with New Yorkers, but at the end of the day, this is a guy who said he wants to seize the means of production, that he wants to take over our supermarkets and have them be government run. He wants to buy housing and turn them into communes. He supports defunding the police and says that he probably won't replace them if he drives them out. So I think we're going to have a real problem here in terms of public safety and quality of life, and he's going to make New York less affordable. Because when you talk about rent freezes, guess what? That means somebody's got to pay for that at the end of the day, and the property taxes will increase to pay for so many other parts of this agenda. That'll be passed on to renters in one form or another. And so I think we have our work cut out for us, and as the only Republican here in New York City, I'm going to be that line of defense and push back as much as possible, whether that means taking them to court or working with the federal agencies when it comes to certain things that they need permits for. And then federal funding. We're not going to fund a socialist agenda, but I also want to make sure that New Yorkers are not hurt or punished because half the city supported this guy. half the city didn't, and we need to make sure that we still get resources for our police, for our hospitals. So it's going to be a balancing act there, but we'll get the job done.
Yeah. A lot of celebration on the other side of the aisle. Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, of course, big smiles there, the front row, really enjoying that day for the Democratic Socialists. Here's what she had to say about the victory.
New York City has chosen the ambitious pursuit of universal child care, affordable rent and housing, and clean and dignified public transit for all. And we have chosen that over the distractions of bigotry and the barbarism of extreme income inequality. We have chosen this path because we know that it's the right thing to do.
Really enormous promises coming from this ideology.
Yeah, that's what socialists do. It sounds so wonderful, but it's going to be a socialist dystopia. Just look at Venezuela. This is the perfect example. They did all these things. They actually did seize the means of production, and they did take over housing, and they did take over supermarkets. Now people are starving, they're fleeing, they have violent gangs, drug traffickers trying to kill Americans to make a dollar. This is the reality of what socialism brings. And you could look at any country that has tried to implement it. My mother fled communist Cuba. Socialism is communism light. And I made that point on the House floor when we had a resolution condemning socialism, and the Democrats spent about an hour defending socialism. So they are the party of socialism. They are moving more and more to the left because they are afraid of people like Bernie Sanders. They're afraid of people like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, and they're afraid of people like Zohran Mamdani because they are about self-preservation. They're not about what's right. They're not about protecting America, our freedoms, our liberties, and the taxpayers. They are about protecting themselves and their jobs.
Congresswoman, I want to quickly get your views on the upcoming battle on health care as well, now the subsidies have been removed. What do you think that's going to look like? Will it lead to a government shutdown?
Well, look, I think that the Democrats probably will be threatening a shutdown, but I think that there's a solution here. I'm supporting bipartisan legislation with Brian Fitzpatrick. There were 8 of us, half Republicans, half Democrats, that came up with a solution here. We're saying, let's not let it expire completely so premiums increase. Let's not extend it without any changes. Let's do something actually in the middle here, come up with a balanced approach. So we will extend these tax credits, but at the same time rein in and hold accountable the insurance companies and the brokers that have taken advantage of the taxpayers. They have fraudulently enrolled people into this program that don't even exist, or they've used the same social security number to sign up dozens of people, and they were getting tax credits for every single one of those individuals. So we hold some parameters, reforms accountable. I think that you'll see the system will work temporarily. We still need to work as a Congress to fix the Affordable Care Act, because at the end of the day, it's not affordable at all, which is why we're in this problem to begin with, where premiums are increasing. And Republicans just passed great legislation to lower those premiums by 12%. I think there's more we can do to lower prescription drugs, and I think we're going to see that come January.
Yeah. Congresswoman, thanks so much for joining us today.
Well, the commie is in control as socialist Zohran Mamdani looks to go mainstream. New York City's freshly minted mayor not wasting any time enacting his far-left agenda during his first 2 days in charge of the largest city in America by immediately seizing the means of executive orders revoking the ones his predecessor, Eric Adams, signed on Israel and anti-Semitism. And the revolution started very fast. Zohran literally getting sworn in by the OG Krusty Krab socialist, Bernie Sanders.
Thank you to the man whose leadership I seek most to emulate, who I am so grateful to be sworn in by today, Senator Bernie Sanders. We will replace the frigidity of rugged individualism with the warmth of collectivism. I was elected as a democratic socialist, and I will govern as a democratic socialist. I will not abandon my principles for fear of being deemed radical.
Yet the rich will abandon the city in droves. Just watch. Naturally, the Democratic Socialist A-list was in the front row, Bernie and AOC addressing the comrade ceremony.
New York City has chosen the ambitious pursuit of universal child care, affordable rent and housing, and clean and dignified public transit for all. And we have chosen that over the distractions of bigotry and the barbarism of extreme income inequality.
Zohran's opponents have called the agenda that he campaigned on radical, communistic, and absolutely unachievable. Really? That's not what we believe.
Is Bernie okay? He thinks that he might have had a nip at a little bit of the mayoral sherry there, Charlie.
He got into the eggnog a little early.
Well, let's talk about the line that is setting tongues wagging across the landscape. It's the frigidity of rugged individualism versus the warmth of the collective.
America versus the Soviet Union. And seriously, I know that both of his parents were professors. I don't know if they ever looked up the word collectivism, but there's another word for it, fascism. And of course, fascism always comes dressed as socialism, as you know better than anybody. It's sort of amusing to watch all of this. To me, the more alarming part of it is I don't know that he sells outside of New York. I think he's probably a little bit more impressive than Barack Obama, who was, famously not very smart. I don't think this guy is very smart. I don't think this guy is going to transform his silly, college dorm room ideas about governing into anything more serious. To me, the far more serious concern about it is that you have people like AOC, who I think is probably a whole lot more effective at politics outside of New York, that she's so enthralled with him. And whether or not he does manage, and I love the fact that you have Bernie up there, and Mamdani saying that he's not going to sell out to the party bosses and the wealthy, even though, of course, Bernie Sanders, that's exactly what Bernie Sanders did. He sold out to the party officials in order to hand the party over to Hillary Clinton and to Joe Biden. So whether or not this actually goes beyond the borders of New York City, I don't know. But it is truly, truly sad that the economic capital of the world has been turned over to this ridiculous person.
Well, it's interesting, Paul, because the economic capital of the world was quoted a very famous slogan by AOC during her speech, where she said, if we can make it here, we can make it anywhere. Of course, sort of bastardizing some of the lines from New York, New York. But I think what she's letting people onto is that New York is a very competitive place to succeed.
Yes, of course. And one of the sort of hidden metrics in this is that New York has always been about money, right? Cities are about a certain thing. LA's about movies, Chicago's at the mercantile system, Boston's about universities, Washington about governance, I could go on. But New York has always been about money, and that's always been the lever to pull us out when we had really bad mayors, and we've had our share, de Blasio, excuse me. So you have this thing that we had downtown, Wall Street, and that was the great savior. The problem now is that Wall Street is completely diffused. You can run a hedge fund from the moon. You don't have to be here. So what does that mean? That means the thing we have to offer is the lifestyle, right? Safety, the nightlife, the restaurants, all that other stuff. And he's going to replace that, apparently, with collectivism. And in his speech, by the way, he did something very clever. It was a very, very sort of managed speech, all right? They spent a lot of time on that. They had a lot of time he's had since he got elected. He had collectivism and then housing very close together. You get collectivism plus housing. There's a word for that, too, Charlie. Communes. That's what a collective housing is, right? So look, where he's really going to go into trouble, in my estimation, just to close the loop, is public safety. Rikers Island's closing. We're going to lose 70% of our jail beds. CCRB, that's the citizens, going to be responsible for all police discipline. We're down 10,000 cops now, as it is since 9/11.
Not breaking up homeless encampments.
We're going to lose, right, homeless encampments, I could go on. ICE. All right, they're not going to cooperate there. 7,000 felons in custody that they don't want to hand over, yada, yada, yada. And this neo-racism of I'm going to tax white neighborhoods more. It's patently illegal. There's going to be a lot of turbulence. He's going to try to get past the midterms so he doesn't lose the governor. But that's when you'll really see his true colors.
Yeah, but the governor of New York, Kathy Hochul, is right now on board with it because it seems cool.
Yes, and okay, look,
She's up for re-election.
Yes, of course, and of course, everyone knows I'm all for small government, right? So I'm fully aware that his policies wouldn't work, aren't going to work, but we should also look at why he does appeal so much to younger generations, my generation and generations younger than me, because he really tapped into a frustration of ours, which particularly I would say on housing, right? If his policies were to be enacted, yes, they'd be a disaster. The only thing that lowers prices is competition. But conservatives have been very bad at pushing that message. They have not pushed a solution at all, really, or actually, they haven't even really acknowledged that it's a problem, right? About 45% of millennials don't own homes, and a large share of those people, it's not just that they're late bloomers, it's that they're actually structurally locked out. And yet the conservative message tends to be that millennials are lazy and they buy too many lattes and they buy too much avocado toast. But the fact and the numbers of the matter, that's not true, right? In a lot of areas, prices doubled, wages didn't double. Because homes were 3 or 4 times the median income. Now we're looking at 6 to 10 times the median income in a lot of areas, right? Buying or making coffee at home is not going to be enough to close that gap. And the number one predictor of whether or not a millennial does own a home is family wealth. If it was about hard work, then hard work would be a predictor of that. Other factors, of course, homeowners are, locked into lower rates, so they're not going to sell. And then, of course, a chronic undersupply of homes, particularly where there are a lot of jobs in an area.
Which would get worse with rent stabilization,
Absolutely.
rent freezing,
Absolutely.
rent control.
Fully agree. Completely agree with all of that. Of course, Mamdani's solutions would make this way worse. Of course, the only answer is to decrease prices using competition and the free market. His solutions are ridiculous and they're horrible. But until conservatives are able to acknowledge, yes, this is a problem and it's not as simple as millennials being cappuccino addicts, then unfortunately, you can have ideas that are this ridiculous and win because at least somebody is listening to you that there's a problem.
Yes, and I think that the president is trying to seize on that, and he has actually used the term affordability.
He called it a hoax, though.
Unfortunately, the far left progressives, some of whom you have railed against on this very show, they think that this is a mandate. But are we really waiting for the city to crater in order to prove that this brand of governance really that's the zero-sum enterprise? It's not the wealth gap that AOC talks about?
A couple of things. One, I agree with Kat a lot around when it comes to millennials being locked out of the housing market. 2, I do think the president says affordability, but he also calls it a hoax in the same breath. So you can't
he's also
say
brought prices
Hold
down
on, wait a
in
minute. Allow me to finish.
inflation.
But 2, before we throw around, I think both parties throw around labels, and I think it's important to sort of delve into some of the policies that Mamdani is advocating for. One of those that I think is something that we should be talking about more is childcare. He's advocating for free childcare. It's a program that we've seen be implemented in other states. One state that did this just recently was the state of New Mexico. They implemented free childcare for every New Mexican, no matter how much money you make, no matter where you live. And we haven't seen people run to leave New Mexico. Actually, people move into New Mexico. And the reason for that is when you allow folks to take childcare off of their sort of balance sheet, what happens is they're allowed, mom and dad are both able to go to work, you increase competitiveness, you also, you put more people into the workforce, and you decrease how much money people are paying for childcare. Right now, in a lot of households, childcare is the cost of a college tuition. Childcare in some households are more than their mortgage payment. And as a nation, until we have a conversation of what it costs for daycare, we're not going to move this country forward.
I'm well aware of how expensive childcare is.
Exactly. And what Zohran is advocating for is something that other states are already doing, and it's working. So before we just say Zohran is bad, everything is socialist, there's some good things that he's advocating for that a lot of Americans are saying we should do something about this.
Okay, first of all, free childcare isn't free. Number one.
No, of course somebody's got to pay for it, but the ideal of
that would be the fixed variable, Richard. That's a small thing.
The ideal of a working family or 2 teachers or a waiter and a waitress both going to work and have to pay $2,000 to $3,000 a month to put their child in daycare, that's
and thankfully,
absurd.
Daycare there's never any fraud involved in daycare.
Yeah,
sure, I'm not saying.
By the way, how are you going to increase wages for childcare workers if it's free?
Well, at the end of the day, when childcare is as much as college tuition, that is a problem. And until the government says we're going to do something about it, we're going to constantly deal with how we're going to deal with competitiveness. We're going to deal with how do you have a country that works. And remember, all of the countries that we're competing against, whether it's the United Kingdom, whether it's Germany, whether it's France, whether it's Australia, whether it's Japan, whether it's China, they all have supplemented childcare in those countries.
Well, maybe
and that's why they're seeing economic growth.
You know what they don't have
Maybe Donald Trump should solve that problem. But hey,
do you
who's
want
listening?
minimum wage laws in
You want the
Scandinavia.
people who are running the DMV to raise
Exactly.
your kid? Right. All right.
No, and I also am not going to let my child incur $400,000 in student loan debt.
Absolutely.
Let's bring in Matt Gorman, who is the Chief Communications Officer at Targeted Victory and a former Tim Scott campaign advisor, and Mally Smith, a Democratic strategist and a former Harris campaign political director in North Carolina. Gentlemen, good afternoon. Let's dive right in. It's only day one of Mayor Mamdani, and he's starting to get this criticism. And Mally, I want to go to you first, because while it is such a huge win for a socialist to win the most powerful, largest city in the country, arguably, certainly when it comes to the economic power, you have not seen any Democrat socialist ever win on the national scale. But yet here is Congresswoman Debbie Dingell saying that maybe Mamdani and this democratic socialism is the way forward. Listen.
You've been saying for a long time that Democrats need a Project 2028 to lay out their agenda. Did you hear elements of that in Mamdani's speech?
I did. And I think what we have to, it's not enough for us to be anti-President Trump. People want to know what we're for and how we're going to deliver.
So, Mally, what say you? Is the Mamdani playbook going to be what we see from Democrats in 2026?
I think part of the playbook, I think it's going to be focusing on affordability and cost of living issues, which Mamdani did. He focused in on high rent, high bus costs, high food costs. But I do not think it's the democratic socialism label. I think for us to win, like we did in 2025, winning the Virginia and New Jersey governor's races, it's going to be having a big tent. That means running candidates in their states and districts that match their states and districts. So in a place like West Virginia, we need someone like Joe Manchin. In a place like North Carolina, we need someone like Roy Cooper. Sure, we're going to have more progressive people like Mamdani in New York, but it's about matching the candidate with the district. I also got to say, it'll be interesting to see Republicans try to turn Mamdani into the boogeyman. We saw President Trump was pretty smitten with him in that Oval Office meeting. It was like a scene out of Heated Rivalry. So I don't know how they're going to turn Mamdani into the target of the attack, given Trump's kind words about him just a few months ago.
All right, Matt, then I'll come to you to get an answer for Mally. What are Republicans going to do in terms of trying to sort of tie Democrats and label them all as Mamdani playbook people?
Well, look at what he's done so far. Obviously, you talked about how he rescinded the definition of anti-Semitism. He also rescinded additional protections for houses of worship, like synagogues, that Eric Adams put in, so additional law enforcement could protect them. He rescinded that. But I think it was a little delicious look at what the Mamdani mayoralship will be like. He invited all of his supporters down to this block party, and when they came to the block party, they found out they're in barricaded pens with no food and no bathrooms. So we're going to see day by day what the remnants of democratic socialism are, pointing that out. And let's remember one other thing. Joe Manchin isn't in the Democratic Party anymore. They ran him out even before he left Congress, and he's no longer, he's doing a book tour right now. He's a great guy, but he's not in the Democratic Party because they ran him out. So that big tent is getting a lot smaller by the day, and folks like Mamdani are infiltrating it.
You know, Mally, I want to ask you, obviously, we all heard the inauguration speech from Mamdani talking about the frigidity of individualism and the warmth of collectivism, which suggests that, you know, you traditionally see candidates that run to the right and left of their party and then sort of move back to the middle. But yet, from that speech, it looks like he's not going to slow down anytime soon. And do you think that's going to be concerning? Because even former Mayor Bill de Blasio says that Mamdani's not going to succeed in New York without both the state government, meaning Governor Hochul, and at the federal level, and that is President Trump. Listen here.
Practically, you cannot do it alone when you're mayor. You need your state government especially, and to some extent the federal government. He did a masterful job, I think, in neutralizing, at least to date, President Trump and creating an interesting kind of bromance there. That's going to keep the federal government off his back so he can focus on Albany and get help from the state government.
How worried should Mamdani be, Mally, about keeping this relationship?
Well, I do think there's some legitimacy to that point, because he is going to need to have a good relationship with the governor, and he's going to need to have a workable relationship with President Trump. And as his opponent's dad said, you know, you govern in prose and you campaign in poetry. Well, he's going to have to figure out how to make his prose at least somewhat pretty, because he had a lot of lofty campaign promises. And I think, New Yorkers are going to look and say, hey, what have you made progress on? So I think he's going to have to figure out what parts of his agenda he can break off and show real progress there. For me, I think it's with his proposal on making buses free and more efficient. I think that's something he can easily do, hopefully, and make progress there.
And we'll see if it works. Mally Smith, Matt Gorman, thank you for taking time. Have a great week.
Ready, set, Zo. New York City's new mayor, Zohran Mamdani, doubling down on what he calls a democratic socialist agenda, and he's wasting no time. Just hours after taking office, Mamdani signed a flurry of executive orders, and today he signed another order creating a new Office of Mass Engagement, whatever that means. Let's go to correspondent CB Cotton in New York City with the details. CB?
Hey, Guy. Well, Zohran Mamdani came onto the political scene with democratic socialist policy ideas, things like free buses, free child care. It earned him more than 1 million votes in the general election, and now as mayor, he's trying to make sure that his reach with New Yorkers does not let up. As you mentioned, signing an executive order today, creating the Office of Mass Engagement, and he picked a fellow democratic socialist to lead up the new effort. But today, Mamdani is also addressing criticism for one of his executive orders that has revoked every executive order signed by his predecessor, former Mayor Eric Adams, after Adams was indicted on federal corruption charges. That indictment was later dropped by the Trump administration's DOJ, and Mamdani is framing the move as a necessary reset to win back a skeptical city. But among the Adams-era orders that Mamdani has rescinded are ones that were seen as support for Israel and Jewish New Yorkers, including one that adopted a broad definition of anti-Semitism. Mamdani is insisting today, though, that his administration is still committed to protecting Jewish New Yorkers.
My administration will also be marked by a city government that will be relentless in its efforts to combat hate and division. And we will showcase that by fighting hate across the city.
Meanwhile, the National Jewish Advocacy Center is demanding answers after it says 2 posts on the official New York City mayoral X account appear to have been deleted after the new mayor took over. The group says the post discussed the previous administration's efforts to combat anti-Semitism. A Mamdani spokesperson has not responded to our repeated requests for comment, but this spokesperson did insist to the New York Post that the deleted social media posts are simply being archived. Guy.
All right, CB, thank you very much for that report. Well, Mamdani's supporters, and there's a lot of them, they're getting their first taste of what his leadership might look like in that city. A lot of them showed up for a disastrous block party, as it was billed, with no food, which is a familiar sight, unfortunately, under communism, and no bathrooms. One attendee told the New York Post, quote, "It's not exactly what I was expecting. I was expecting food and music." Another said, quote, "I could have watched this from home." With that, let's bring in John Ashbrook, co-host of the Ruthless Variety program, a great podcast, and Molly Hemingway, editor-in-chief of The Federalist and a Fox News contributor. Happy New Year. Great to see you both.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. All right, Molly, I want to start with you and this soundbite, which was from the inaugural address, the speech given from Mamdani. A lot of people noticed it immediately. He calls his brand of politics democratic socialism. A lot of people heard something more sinister than that right here.
We will draw this city closer together. We will replace the frigidity of rugged individualism with the warmth of collectivism. If our campaign demonstrated that the people of New York yearn for solidarity, then let this government foster it. Because no matter what you eat, how you pray, or where you come from, the words that most define us are the 2 we all share: New Yorkers.
Molly, the warmth of collectivism, and it's sort of this utopian sounding sentiment, but we've seen coercive collectivism through history resulting in untold human suffering.
Yeah, you have to have had a very poor education in the history of collectivism to think that warmth is anything associated with it. When we look at collectivist societies that oppose rugged individualism, by the way, rugged individualism is what built this country and is what has made this country so great in so many ways. But collectivism is associated with not having heat in the winters and not having any food to keep you warm. And to have him talk about it as if it's a positive thing is really disturbing. In our country, I think we view society as something where individuals owe a debt to society. We want to be good law-abiding citizens. The vision that he's painting is of a society that owes individuals certain things, and this is what we've seen in former communist countries, and has not worked out well for any of them.
No, and certainly not for the people. Worked out pretty well for a lot of the elites for a while, which is another feature of communism. But it's just interesting, he's very much embracing what he calls the warmth of collectivism, rejecting the frigidity of rugged individualism upon which the country was built. And then, John, his supporters show up for what they're told was a block party, and it's freezing, and there's no food, and they can't even find a toilet. That seems kind of like an appropriate little segue into this administration.
No, it's exactly right. I mean, it's what people will get with a guy like him. You know, Molly is exactly right. Individualism is what built this country. And when he starts talking about the warmth of collectivism, what that warmth is going to come from is him basically taking all of our civil liberties, our United States Constitution, and all of our personal property, throwing it in a trash can and burning it and saying, hey, do you like the warmth coming off of that fire? This guy is an absolute horrible, horrible development in this country, and I hope everybody outside of New York will look and see what's happening there and be like, no, I don't want that in my city.
I want to play quickly. This is a soundbite from one of the Mamdani supporters who showed up in New York, sort of listing out the expectations that the Mamdani crowd has for the new mayor.
Zohran ahdan wa wa'dan means in Arabic, keep your promise. You promise us, keep those promises. Number one, immigrant. No ICE in New York City. We all immigrant in this country. This country was built by immigrants. Second, lower the rent, keep New York City safe for all people from all religion and background. Third, free Palestine. You promise us if Netanyahu, war criminal who committed genocide in Gaza, ever visit New York City to be arrested.
All right, so we got the genocide lie there. 3 bullet points from that woman, one of which was abolish ICE, basically. The other of which was free Palestine, Netanyahu in handcuffs. John, this is what his base is demanding. Do, like, ordinary New Yorkers know what they've gotten here?
I mean, it's insane. I mean, people from New York want basic services from their local government. And he actually ran on all these promises about buses and remember the stupid grocery thing? Like, he ran on local problems, and now he's talking about global changes, and people are expecting all of these international changes. And the two things just do not meet. Yeah, go ahead.
There's also an issue here where a lot of this country feels like we are pushing against a system that has worked very well for a lot of people. Rule of law, private property. They look at what's happening, with this story of the Somali fraud in Minnesota, and they're worried that the country is going to fall apart. And when you see what Mamdani is doing and saying, let's take all of these bad ideas that have already put the country to a breaking point and let's make them even bigger. And this woman saying what we need is more mass, uncontrolled migration from countries with no attempt at assimilation. This is the type of thing that is concerning a lot of Americans, and he's embracing it.
It's insanity, and it's coming at the same time as we're seeing what's happening with the Somali population in Minnesota and other parts of the country where there's just rampant fraud. This unfettered migration is a huge problem.
And we will be covering that fraud in the very next segment, as a matter of fact. Elon Musk backing Republicans ahead of this year's midterm elections. Yes, it's 2026. He warns America is toast if the radical left wins. They will open the floodgates to illegal immigration and fraud. Won't be America anymore. This comes on the heels of New York City's brand new mayor, a socialist, Zohran Mamdani. He had his inauguration, where his message could have major implications for Democrats.
You've been saying for a long time that Democrats need a Project 2028 to lay out their agenda. Did you hear elements of that in Mamdani's speech?
I did. And I think what we have to, it's not enough for us to be anti-President Trump. People want to know what we're for and how we're going to deliver.
Here with reaction, Fox News contributor Mary Catherine Ham. Hello, stranger. Great to see you. So she said it's not enough to just be anti-Trump. So I guess they also have to be hardcore socialists as well. That's the proactive productive agenda that they're embracing now more writ large?
I mean, the plan, such that it is, seems to be coming from Mamdani. All the things will be free. We will take them from the rich. The rich magically somehow won't leave New York City, and all will be solved. Meanwhile, we have this, of course, Minnesota fraud going on that suggests that perhaps when you make childcare basically free, it doesn't work out so good, and a bunch of people get paid for not doing childcare. And I think you'll see that probably in every program in New York City. Now, he may be able to speak well enough about the warmth of collectivism it feels like a warm bath to me, a warmth of the collectivism to keep him out of trouble with some of his voters, but I don't think the outcomes are going to be good here.
There was a moment not long ago where it felt like Elon Musk and President Trump were really on the outs, and maybe Musk was talking about starting some new party. It seems like maybe the fences are being mended, and Elon will be in with resources, money, that kind of thing in 2026?
It seems like that's the case, and I think Musk is facing what many voters face, which is he's looking at the Mamdanis of the world, and he's saying, this looks like a bad choice. I would like to forestall that. Maybe I don't love this side very much. Maybe I have fights with Trump. Maybe I have many issues with him. But I am willing to do that to forestall the Mamdani program of being installed in the whole country.
All right, let's turn to a subject perhaps even sorer than socialism right now, for you specifically, which is college football.
Yes.
You are back in D.C. fresh from last night's Sugar Bowl in New Orleans, which was, in all fairness, one of the best games I've seen in a long time. Your team, the Bulldogs of Georgia, ended up on the wrong side of the score. Congratulations to Ole Miss with a huge win.
Hey everyone, I'm Emily Campagno. Catch me and my co-hosts Harris Faulkner and Kaylee McEnany on Outnumbered every weekday at 12 p.m. Eastern, or set your DVR. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page for daily highlights.